I knew it was a mistake the moment Ethan's text flashed on my screen. Mom's excited to finally meet you. Dress nice. 7 p.m. sharp. The two words sat in my stomach like lead. I knew what that meant in Ethan's coded language. It meant not this. I looked down at my worn but comfortable Converse, my favorite vintage Levi's, and the simple black sweater I'd bought with my own tutoring money. This was me, Chloe Chin, a senior at Columbia, studying art history, living in a modest but sunny walk-up in Morningside Heights. The girl who packed her own lunch and took the subway, not the girl who was the sole beneficiary of the Chin Family Trust, a fact known to precisely 3 people besides myself, my late father's lawyer, the trust's executor, Samuel Reynolds, and my therapist, Ethan Sterling. My boyfriend of 8 months wasn't one of them. He knew my mom was a retired high school teacher living in Florida, and my father had not passed. He knew I had a scholarship. He'd constructed a narrative of a plucky, scrappy girl making her way in the city, and I'd let him. It was easier than the truth, which sounded like a bad rom-com pitch, even to me. You're being paranoid, I muttered to myself, staring at my small closet, but the pit in my stomach disagreed. I'd seen the way Ethan's eyes sometimes skimmed over my friends. The slight pause when I suggested a food truck instead of the new fusion place in Soho. I heard the careful edits in his stories about his family. I'd just chosen, for once, to be blissfully, stupidly in love and ignore them. With a sigh, I bypassed the few dressier items I owned. If Victoria Sterling wanted to meet me, she'd meet me. I swapped the Converse for ankle boots and added a silver necklace my mom gave me. This was as nice as it was getting. The Uber dropped me at the wrought iron gates of Oak Ridge Estates. Even the name sounded expensive and exclusionary. The driver whistled low, some digs. You visiting? Something like that. I said, my throat tight. I gave my name at the guardhouse. The guard, a man in a crisp uniform that probably cost more than my monthly rent, checked a tablet. Yes, Ms. Chin, for the Sterling residence. Go right in. 12 Maple Crescent. The car rolled down immaculately paved streets, lined with what looked like identical, massive French, provincial mini-mansions. Each one screamed temporary luxury, the kind rented by corporate expats or, I was beginning to suspect, people desperately maintaining a facade. I recognized the model. My trust's quarterly portfolio summaries listed Oak Ridge Estates as a stable, high-yield residential property. I'd skimmed the line item 100 times. Now, seeing it, I felt a weird disconnect. These were my houses, in a way, and I was about to be judged for not living in one. Ethan was waiting at the door of number 12. He looked handsome, anxious, and already a little critical. His eyes did the quick, full body scan. Hey, you look great, he said, leaning in for a kiss that landed on my cheek. His voice had that forced brightness people use when they're disappointed moms in the living room. Just be yourself. But, but what? Ethan. Just. She's old-fashioned. She appreciates effort. He gestured vaguely at my clothes. This Isofort, I said flatly. He forced a laugh, mistaking my tone for a joke, and ushered me inside. The interior was a showroom of generic luxury, all beige and cream, impersonal art, furniture that looked too stiff to actually sit on. It smelled of lemon polish and anxiety, and there, perched on the edge of a silk sofa, like a queen on a contested throne, was Victoria Sterling. She was a beautiful woman, in a sharp, frozen way, blonde hair in a perfect chin-length bob, a cream silk blouse, trousers that likely had a designer name I wouldn't recognize. Her smile was a thin, assessing line. Ethan, darling, and you must be Chloe. She didn't get up. She extended a hand with perfectly manicured nails. I took it, Her grip was cool and brief. Finally, we were beginning to think you were a hologram. It's nice to meet you, Mrs. Sterling, I said, taking the armchair she nodded toward. It was deeper than I expected, making me feel like a child swallowed by furniture. Victoria, please. Mrs. Sterling makes me feel ancient. Her laugh was a tinkling bell with no warmth. So. Chloe, Ethan tells me you're at Columbia, a fine school. What are you studying? Art history. One perfectly shaped eyebrow arched. How? Creative. And what does one do with that? I'm applying to grad programs in museum studies. I'd like to work in curation. A museum. She said the word as if it were a synonym for mausoleum. How noble. Not very lucrative, I imagine. It's not really about the money for me. Isn't that nice? She said, her tone indicating it was anything but Ethan is at Columbia Law. Of course. First in his class. He's on a trajectory for a partnership at Skadden or Kravitz. The right connections are so crucial in that world. Her eyes swept over me again. A clear inventory of the dot connections. I did not represent. Where did you say you were from? Chloe, your accent is faint. I grew up in Connecticut. My mom's in Sarasota now. Sarasota is pleasant for retirees. She conceded, as if awarding a point. And your father, he passed away when I was 12. A flicker of something, not sympathy, but a recalculation. I N her eyes, I'm sorry to hear that. And what did he do? I felt Ethan tense. We'd never discussed this in detail that he was in finance. I said, which was true, if a galactic understatement. Chunley Holdings was a bit more than finance. A difficult business. Volatile. She seemed to file me away in a mental category. Fatherless. Impractical degree. No visible money. Well, let's have dinner. Maria, a woman in a white uniform, appeared silently. We moved to a dining table that could seat 12. The three of us were clustered at one end, surrounded by empty, judging chairs. The food was elaborate. Tiny portions on huge plates. I had no idea what I was eating. So, Chloe, where are you living in the city? Victoria asked, spearing a piece of asparagus. Morningside Heights. Near campus. Renting. I assume. Yes. A small studio. It's all I need. How practical. She took a sip of wine, Ethan. You really must convince her to explore better neighborhoods. The Upper East Side has some charming walk-ups, or even a decent building in the 70s. This, she waved her hand, encompassing my existence, no way to live long-term. It's so, transient. Ethan shifted in his seat. Mom, Chloe's place is fine. It's close to her classes. Of course. Darling, it's just that environment shapes one. You're the company you keep, the surroundings you tolerate. She turned the full force of her smile on me that we're renting here. Of course, but it's a quality environment, the only kind worth having. Do you know what the monthly on this house is? I took a slow breath that I couldn't begin to guess. $30,000, she said, enunciating each word, a month, and worth every penny for the security, the amenities, the caliber of neighbor. It keeps out the riffraff. Her eyes held mine. You simply cannot put a price on that. This is the sort of place Ethan was raised to expect. The sort of place he'll provide for his own family one day. The air left the room. The unspoken words hung between us. A place you could never afford. Ethan was staring at his plate, a flush creeping up his neck. He said nothing, not a word in my defense, not a joke to deflect the venom. His silence was a louder agreement than any shout. I put my fork down, the metal clicking softly on the china. That's a lovely house. I said, my voice miraculously steady. The trust that manages this community has a reputation for being very selective. They must have very thorough background and credit checks. Victoria blinked, thrown slightly off script by the specific terminology. That I assume so. Not that it's a concern for us. The Sterling name opens doors. But for most people, a place like this is just a dream. A very, very expensive dream. She leaned forward slightly. Where do you see yourself in? Say, 5 years. Chloe, realistically. I looked at Ethan, willing him to meet my eyes, to say something. He took a gulp of wine. I was on my own. Realistically, Mrs. Sterling, I said, abandoning. Victoria. I see myself doing work I care about, living within my means, being with people who value me for more than my zip code or my father's old tax returns. Her smile didn't waver. It just got colder. How? Quaint. Idealism is a luxury of the young and the unburdened. Wait until you have real responsibilities, a family to uphold. Appearances matter. My dear, they are the currency of the world you so naively want to critique from the sidelines. Ethan understands that. Don't you? Darling. Ethan finally looked up. His gaze bounced from his mother's expectant face to mine, which I knew was now a mask of calm over a churning sea of hurt and fury. He opened his mouth, closed it, then said, Mom's just looking out for us. Chloe, she wants what's best. And there it was, the line drawn in the sand. On one side, Victoria, her $30,000 a month rental, her caliber, her expectations. On the other, me, my studio, my student debt she assumed, my naive ideals, and Ethan, my Ethan, had just stepped over to her side. I think I understand perfectly what's best, I said quietly. I pushed my chair back. Thank you for dinner. Mrs. Sterling. It was illuminating. Ethan, I'm going to head out. Chloe, don't be dramatic, Ethan said, standing up. His voice held a warning. An embarrassment. Sit down. Have dessert. I've lost my appetite. Victoria sighed, a sound of profound disappointment. Ethan, let her go if she's going to be sensitive. Some people simply aren't equipped for frank conversation. It's a pity. She looked at me as if I were a piece of art in the wrong museum. You seem like a nice enough girl. Chloe, but you have to understand, Ethan's future is bright. It requires a certain foundation, a certain kind of partner, one who isn't intimidated by the cost of things. That was the final straw, the sheer, unadulterated gall of this woman, sitting in a house she didn't own, on land she didn't own, judging Meffer, not having enough to rent it from me. I smiled then, a real smile that touched my eyes for the first time all evening. It felt dangerous on my face, the cost of things. I repeated slowly that you're absolutely right. Victoria, some things do have a hidden cost, like integrity, like self-respect. They can be very expensive to lose. Thank you for the lesson. Good night. I turned and walked out of the dining room, through the cavernous, lifeless living room, and out the heavy front door. I didn't look back. The cool night air hit me like a slap. I started walking, my boots clicking on the pristine sidewalk, past the silent, imposing houses. My hands were shaking, not from sadness, not yet, from a white-hot, clarifying rage. I fumbled my phone out of my pocket. I didn't call an Uber. I opened my contacts and scrolled past Ethan's name, past my mom's, past my friends. I found the one labeled S, Reynolds, Trust. It rang twice before calm. Familiar voice answered, Chloe, is everything all right? It's late. Samuel Reynolds sounded alert, concerned. He'd been my father's closest friend. He was the closest thing I had to family in the city. Samuel, I said, my voice trembling with the effort of control. Did I need a favor? A completely off the books, confidential inquiry. Of course. What is it? Oak Ridge Estates. The rental at 12 Maple Crescent. I need to know everything about the tenant. Everything. Payment history. Lease violations. Complaints. Everything. There was a long pause on the other end. I could almost hear his legal mind whirring. Chloe, may I ask why? I looked back at the house, glowing like a gaudy jewel in the night. I could see Ethan's silhouette at the living room window, watching me. I turned away. Let's just say, I said, my voice now icy calm, that I'm considering the cost off things. My apartment never felt smaller or more like a sanctuary than it did that night. The silence was a physical thing, thick and heavy, compared to the ringing disdain in Victoria Sterling's voice. I dropped my bag, kicked off the boots that had felt like armor during my exit, and slumped onto my second-hand sofa. My hands were still vibrating. The phone in my palm felt like a live wire. Samuel's measured tone replayed in my head. I'll have a preliminary report by noon tomorrow. And further questions. That was Samuel, discreet, efficient, and utterly loyal to my father's memory, and by extension, to me, the executor of the Chun Family Trust, a man who knew the exact value of every brick in Oak Ridge Estates and the precise weight of my secret. I didn't cry. I was too angry for tears. I replayed the dinner on a loop, each iteration more infuriating. Victoria's condescending smile, the way she'd said riffraff, the smug pronouncement of $30,000 a month. But the image that burned brightest was Ethan, my brilliant, charming Ethan, staring at his plate. His silence was the real betrayal. His mother's cruelty was a given. His complicity was the wound. My phone lit up. Ethan, Chloe, come on. Don't be like this. Mom's just intense. Come back and let's talk. I stared at the text. Intense. That was the euphemism. That was his lifelong rationalization. I typed a response, deleted it, typed another. Finally, I settled on, I'm home. We can talk tomorrow. The 3 dancing dots appeared immediately, then stopped. No reply. My heart, that traitorous organ, squeezed. Part of me wanted him to rush over, to apologize, to tell me his mother was a nightmare and he chose me. The smarter, angrier part knew better. The next morning dawned gray and drizzling, matching my mood. I went through the motions of my morning routine, but my mind was elsewhere. A beige living room on Maple Crescent. My art history lecture on Renaissance patronage felt bitterly ironic. All that money funding beauty, while my money funded Victoria Sterling's ugly delusions of grandeur. My phone buzzed at 11:47 a.m. A secure email from Samuel. The subject line, Oak Ridge Estates, 12, Maple Crescent, tenant file, Sterling, V. I found an empty corral in the library, my heart pounding a strange rhythm of dread and anticipation. I opened the attachment. It was a masterpiece of cold, hard data. Victoria Sterling had been a tenant for 4 years. Her guarantor was listed as Sterling Family Trust, Delaware. The rent, as advertised, was $30.000 per month, and it was, as I had suspected, consistently late, not by days but by weeks. A pattern. Payment would arrive on the 10th of the month, then the 15th, then the 22nd. There was a late fee waiver request attached to every single month, citing bank processing delays. The property management company, a subsidiary of the trust, had granted every waiver, too accommodating. Samuel had noted in a bracketed comment, policy is 2 waivers per calendar year. Tenant has exceeded. Then came the violations. Unapproved exterior modifications. She'd installed a hideous bronze fountain in the backyard. Multiple noise complaints from neighbors about late-night parties. 2 formal warnings for unauthorized subletting, that she tried to rent out the pool house as an artist studio. On Airbnb, the file was a chronicle of entitled rule-breaking, smoothed over by a management company too lax to confront a difficult tenant. The final note was the kicker. Her lease was up for renewal in 45 days. The standard renewal notice, offering a 5% market rate increase, had been sent 6 weeks ago. No response. A follow-up email had been ignored. She was living on borrowed time and didn't even know it. Or she knew and assumed her, Sterling name, would bully her way into another waiver. I closed the file. The anger had crystallized into something sharper, more focused. This wasn't just about a horrible dinner. This was a pattern. A woman who believed the rules were for other people, who used her rented address as a cudgel to beat people like me, people she assumed were beneath her. My phone buzzed again. Ethan, can we meet for coffee? Please. I looked at the tenant file still open on my screen. Let's see how deep this goes. Sure did I texted back. Joe's on Amsterdam. 2 p.m. He was already there when I arrived, looking unfairly handsome and wretchedly anxious. He'd gotten us a corner table. 2 coffees sat between us, a feeble peace offering. Chloe, he started, reaching for my hand. I moved it to wrap around my mug. His face fell. Look, about last night. I'm sorry. My mom. She's from a different world. She has these expectations. It's a lot of pressure. And you let her pressure you into sitting silently while she implied I was riffraff, who'd never amount to anything. I said, my voice quiet. I was testing him. He ran a hand through his hair. She didn't mean it like that. She's just protective. She wants stability for me. Financial security is a big part of that. And I don't represent that. He flinched. It's not that simple. Your career path, museums, it's not exactly a sure thing. My mom knows how hard it is. My dad left us with nothing but a name and a pile of debt she's been digging out of for years. This house, the appearances, it's all she has. It's her armor. A piece of the puzzle clicked into place. The desperate performance. The late rent. It wasn't just snobbery. It was a shaky fortress built on credit and pretense. So she rents a $30,000 a month house to prove she's made it, and looks down on people who don't. She's scared. Chloe, scared of slipping back. It makes her harsh. He leaned forward, his eyes pleading, but we don't have to be like that. Imminent like that. Last night was a disaster, but it doesn't change how I feel about you. We just need to manage her. Show her you're serious. About us. About your future. Manage her. I repeated, how? He took a breath, as if steeling himself, maybe. Start thinking about a more practical grad degree, an MBA or something, or even just presentation, the clothes, the vibe. You're so naturally beautiful, but you hide it. If you just made a little more effort when you're around her, it would go a long way. She needs to see you're trying to elevate. I felt the coffee churn in my stomach. Elevate, the word hung in the air between us. Ugly and revealing. You want me to change my career goals and my wardrobe to earn your mother's approval. Not change. Just adapt. For us. This is the world I'm in. Chloe, the legal world. It's all about connections and perception. A partner who fits and opens doors. My mom can open a lot of those doors for me. For us, there it was. The trade, my authenticity for his ambition, my art history for her network. And if I don't want to adapt, I asked, my voice dangerously calm. He looked pained, as if I were being deliberately obtuse. Then it's going to be an uphill battle. I love you, Chloe. I do. But I have to think about my future. Our future. Is it so wrong to want a partner who's on the same page? I looked at him, at the boy I'd fallen for in a dusty library over a shared critique of a constitutional law case. Where was that guy? Buried under his mother's expectations and his own fear of financial mediocrity. What page is that? Ethan. The page that says a person's worth is their net worth. The page that says my father's death and my career passions are just inconvenient obstacles to your trajectory. That's not fair. He snapped, then lowered his voice as other patrons glanced over. You're twisting this. I'm just being realistic. Love isn't enough. You need a foundation. I stood up, the legs of my chair scraping loudly on the floor to your right. Ethan, You do need a foundation. It's just a shame yours is made of your mother's pretensions and least marble. I slung my bag over my shoulder. Don't contact me again. His face paled, Chloe. Wait, I didn't. I walked out into the drizzle. The final thread between us, snapping cleanly. It hurt. God, it hurt. But it was a clean hurt. A surgical removal. Better than the slow poison of his compromise. My phone rang as I walked. Samuel. Chloe. I have the full file. It's worse than the summary. There's a history of complaints from service staff about verbal abuse. And the credit check at the initial application was borderline. A co-signer was required. Who was the co-signer? I asked. A new idea forming. A Lawrence Finch. I've done a preliminary search. He's her ex-husband, Ethan's father, lives in Phoenix. According to the file, he was the one who secured the initial lease. He's still legally the guarantor. My mind raced. So if she's evicted, it hits his credit too. Potentially, yes, if the debt is pursued. Samuel, I said, stopping under an awning. The city swirling around me. What is the standard procedure for a non-compliant tenant with a lease about to expire? Formal notice of non-renewal is sent via certified mail. Given the history of late payments and violations, we would be well within our rights to decline renewal and require vacating the premises by the lease end date. If they refuse, eviction proceedings begin. And how long does that take? In New York, with a good lawyer, months. But the filing itself is a matter of public record. It shows up on credit reports. It's a scarlet letter in the real estate world. I thought of Victoria's smug face, her belief in the invincibility of the Sterling name. I thought of Ethan asking me to elevate, send the formal non-renewal notice. I said, my voice barely a whisper, today. Chloe. Samuel's tone was cautious. Paternal, this is a serious step. It's using the trust's power for a personal matter. Your father. My father taught me that respect is earned, not bought with a late rent check. I interrupted, a sudden lump in my throat, and he taught me not to let people bully me. This is both. Send it, please. A long sigh on the other, END.AS you wish. I'll have it drawn up and sent. It will be from Oak Ridge Estates Management, LLC. Your name won't appear. Thank you. Samuel. Chloe. Be sure. Revenge is a costly ledger to keep. I looked down at my boots, spattered with city rain and grit. The same boots Victoria had sneered at. It's not revenge. I lied. Even to myself, it's accountability. I ended the call. The drizzle had turned to a steady rain. I started walking, aimlessly. The hurt from Ethan was a fresh, raw thing, but beneath it, thrumming with a dark, steady current, was a new sensation, power, not the loud, brash power Victoria wielded like a cheap weapon, but the quiet, absolute power of truth, the power of a signature on a deed. She thought she could judge me from a rented throne. She had no idea the ground beneath her feet was mine, and it was about to crumble. The game had changed. I was no longer Ethan's girlfriend trying to pass muster. I was the silent landlord, and the lease was up. Samuel's non-renewal notice went out on a Friday. By Monday, my world had fractured into two distinct, warring realities. In one, I was Chloe Chin, heartbroken art student. I moved through my classes like a ghost, dodging well-meaning questions from my roommate. Sophia, you and Ethan have a fight. She'd ask, her brow furrowed with concern you've been moping for days. I'd just shrug, offering a non-committal, it's complicated. I deleted Ethan's unanswered texts and ignored his calls. The finality of my walkout at the coffee shop needed to hold. In the other reality, I was a shadow operator. Samuel sent me discreet updates. The certified letter had been delivered and signed for at 12, Maple Crescent at 10:17 a.m. on Saturday. He'd also, at my specific request, informed the property manager that any communication from the tenant regarding the notice was to be forwarded directly to his office, citing that escalation due to historical noncompliance. We were building a wall of procedure between Victoria Sterling and me. I expected fury. I expected a call from Ethan, screaming about unfair landlords. I braced for it. What I didn't expect was the package. It arrived on Wednesday, a plain padded envelope with no return address, slipped under my apartment door. Inside was a cheap, unmarked USB drive. A cold trickle of foreboding ran down my spine. This wasn't Samuel's style. This was something else. I locked my door, drew the blinds, and plugged the drive into my laptop with trembling hands. There was a single audio file, labeled simply, "Listen." I put in my earbuds and pressed play. The first sound was the clink of ice in a glass. Then Victoria's voice, sharp and clear, devoid of its dinner party honey.so. What's the verdict on the little art historian? Ethan's voice, weary, tense. Mom, can we not? It was a disaster. She walked out. Good. A spine. I'll give her that. Misguided. But a spine. Better than that last one. The weeping willow from Vassar to pause. But you're not done. Are you? I don't know. She's really angry. Ethan, listen to me. Look at her. Really look. No family money. A useless degree. No connections. She's a project. A pretty, well-spoken project. I'll grant you. But a project, nonetheless. You have two choices. You mold the project into something presentable, or you cut your losses. My blood turned to ice. A project. I love her. Mom. Ethan's voice was small. A child's protest. Love. Victoria's laugh was a dry crackle. Love doesn't pay for a house in Greenwich. Love doesn't get you introduced to the managing partners. Your father loved me. And look where that got us. You need a partner. Ethan. Someone who understands the game. Someone like Amanda. Amanda, the name hit me like a physical blow. Amanda Ross. Ethan's ex-girlfriend from undergrad. A finance major from an old money Philadelphia family. He'd mentioned her once, dismissively, as that a chapter that's closed. Amanda and I are over, Ethan said. But there was no force behind it. Are you? She texts you every week. She asked about you at the Hamilton's Gala last month. Her father is still a named partner at Wachtell. That's not a closed chapter. Darling, that's a strategic reserve. A long silence, filled only by the sound of liquid being poured. Then Ethan, his voice low and defeated. So what do you want me to do? Give the Chloe project one more month. Take her to the Met Gala benefit next week. Did I have tickets? Get her a decent dress. Coach her on the talking points. See if she can swim. If she sinks, well, you have Amanda's number. And you have your future to think about. You can't afford to be sentimental. Not with the loans you'll have. Not with the name you have to rebuild. And if she finds out about Amanda, what's to find out? You're not with her. You're keeping your options open. That's not cheating. Ethan, that's being smart. She's a big girl. If she can't handle the reality of how the world works, then she's not the girl for you. Simple as that. The recording ended. I sat frozen, the earbuds hissing static into a void. The pain was so immense it was anesthetic. He'd sat there, in my apartment, in my bed, telling me I was his future while keeping his strategic reserve. On speed dial, he'd let his mother dissect me like a lab specimen, a projecto be molded or discarded. And the Met Gala tickets, he'd mentioned them last week. A surprise. He was working on a test, a fucking swim test. I ripped the earbuds out. My hands were shaking violently. Who had sent this? And why? A disgruntled employee at their house. A neighbor who'd overheard. It didn't matter. The truth was in the cold, digital clarity of it. The door to my apartment burst open. Sophia stood there, holding a grocery bag, her face pale. Chloe. Oh my God. Are you okay? I heard you scream. I hadn't even realized I'd made a sound. I looked at her, my vision swimming. Sophia. I croaked that I need a favor. A big one. She dropped the bag and rushed over, wrapping me in a hug. Anything. What is it? I need you to hack Ethan's cloud account. She pulled back, her eyes wide. Sophia was a computer science major, ethical, brilliant, and fiercely protective. Whoa. Chloe, that's illegal. And crazy. What's going on? I handed her the laptop. The audio file still on the screen. Listen to this first. She put in one earbud, her expression shifting from concern to confusion to outright fury as the seconds ticked by. When it finished, she slammed my laptop shut. That son of a bitch. That pretentious, mama's boy son of a bitch. I need to know how deep this goes. Soph, I need to see the texts with Amanda. I need evidence. Not just this anonymous tape. Something concrete. She chewed her lip, the ethical battle warring on her face. Then she looked at me, broken and shaking on the couch. Forget I'm a CS major for a minute. I'm your friend. And that asshole deserves to burn. She grabbed her own laptop. He uses the same password for everything. Sterling Law, 2025. He told you that once when he was drunk. Remember? Boasting about how he'd never forget it. I remembered. The arrogance of it. Sophia's fingers flew across the keyboard. I'm not hacking anything. I'm logging in with his known password to a shared iCloud account you had access to. She shot me a grim, justifying smile. You two shared your locations once. For safety, the password is saved in your keychain. Legally gray, but morally black and white in our favor. Within minutes, she was in. His messages, his photos, his emails. It was a Pandora's box of betrayal. The texts with Amanda were a constant, flirty undercurrent our entire relationship. Miss your smile. She'd sent 2 days after our anniversary. He'd replied, New York isn't the same without you. Drinks next time you're in town. There were photos she'd sent. Not explicit, but intimate. Sunset from her family's Cape Cod house. A selfie at a black tie event with the caption, Wish you were my date. And the emails with his mother. PDFs of Suitable. Internship applications for me. Sent from Victoria to Ethan. Links to articles. That is an arts degree, a waste of money. Notes on conversation starters for museum fundraisers. It was a campaign, a coordinated effort to retrofit me into their mold. But the worst was a single email chain from last week. After the dinner, the subject line, contingency planning. Victoria to Ethan, darling. Attached is the guest list for the Met Gala benefit. Amanda Ross is confirmed as attending with her father. This is your opportunity. If Chloe cannot perform, you will have a graceful exit and a seamless transition. Do not be sentimental. The Ross connection is solid gold. I've already hinted to her father that you might be free soon. Ethan to Victoria, understood. I'll handle Chloe. Have you heard back from the landlord about the lease renewal? I can't have housing instability on top of everything right now. Victoria to Ethan, not yet. Don't worry about that. I'll handle them. No one says no to me. I stared at the screen, a hollow laugh escaping my lips. They were a duo, a manipulative, social climbing duo, and I was the obstacle, soon to be the discarded project. Print it all, I said, my voice eerily calm now. The shock had passed, burned away by a cold, clarifying fury, every text, every email. And Soph, find out everything you can about Amanda Ross. On it. Sophia was already diving into social media. LinkedIn. Society pages. Looks like Daddy's firm is indeed a big deal. She works in philanthropy, mostly planning galas. She's on the junior committee for the Met. Actually, oh, this is rich. What? Her Instagram. A post from 3 days ago. Sophia turned the screen. It was a photo of Amanda at a charity luncheon, beaming. The caption, "So excited for the Met Gala benefit next week. Nothing better than fashion for a cause. Hashtag Met Gala, hashtag philanthropy, hashtag NYC." The same event I was supposed to be tested at. A plan, cruel and perfect, began to form in my mind. It wasn't enough for them to lose their house. They had to lose their narrative, their precious, fragile status. My phone buzzed. It was Samuel. "Chloe," he said, and I could hear the tension in his voice that we have a response. From Victoria Sterling. She's not pleased. What did she say? She's demanded an in-person meeting with the property owner to discuss this outrageous misunderstanding. She claims to have significant leverage and connections on the board. She's threatening legal action for defamation of character if we proceed. I smiled then, a real smile for the first time in days. She was scrambling. The fortress walls were shaking. Set up the meeting. "Samuel, Chloe, be careful. She's a cornered animal, and she doesn't know you're the one behind this." "Exactly," I said, looking at the printed emails fanned out on my coffee table like a hand of cards. "Schedule it for next Friday at your offices. Tell her the owner's representative will see her." "And who will that be?" Samuel asked. "Wary. You will," I said, "but I'll be there too. Not as the owner, as your assistant, the note taker. I want to see her face when she realizes her leverage is worthless. I want to hear her threats in person." Samuel was silent for a long moment. "This is becoming personal. Chloe, dangerous." "It was always personal." "Samuel," I said softly, tracing a finger over Ethan's printed words. "I'll handle Chloe. They made it personal. Now, it's just business. The business of accountability." I hung up and looked at Sophia, who was watching me with a mix of awe and concern. "You're going full Gone Girl in them, aren't you?" she said. I gathered the printed pages, the evidence of my 8-month relationship being a sham, a training exercise for Ethan's real life. I stacked them neatly. A dossier of deceit. "No," I said, my voice steady. Gone Girl was fiction. This is just justice. And I'm not the one who's gone. I'm the one who just showed up. The offices of Reynolds Associates occupied the 40th floor of a glass tower in Midtown. All hushed carpets and views that screamed old money power. I'd been here only a handful of times since my father's death. Always as Chloe Chin, beneficiary, sitting across from Samuel in his cavernous office while he explained bond yields and real estate portfolios in his gentle, patient way. Today, I was someone else. "You look the part," Sophia said, scrutinizing me in the full-length mirror of my closet. I wore severe, impeccably tailored black pantsuit Sophia had produced from the depths of her own surprisingly corporate wardrobe. My hair was pulled back in a low, sleek ponytail, minimal makeup, simple pearl studs. I looked like a junior associate at a white shoe law firm. Anonymous. Professional. Utterly forgettable. Perfect. "It's itchy," I muttered, adjusting the starched collar. "Power is itchy," Sophia quipped, handing me a leather-bound legal pad and a cheap pen. "Remember, you're just there to take notes. Observe. Don't speak unless spoken to. You're a ghost with a vendetta," I said, tucking the pen into the folio. "A ghost with the deed to the haunted house." She corrected with a grim smile. "Now go. Bring me back all the gory details." Samuel's assistant, a perpetually unflappable woman named Margaret, showed me into a small, windowless conference room adjacent to his main office. "Mr. Reynolds will be with you shortly," she said, her tone neutral. "He asked that you review the Sterling file." On the polished mahogany table lay a thick folder. Inside was everything: the lease, the violation notices, the late payment logs with their waived fees, and the newly generated notice of non-renewal and intent to vacate. The finality of the documents was staggering. This wasn't a personal spat anymore. It was a contractual execution. The door to the main office was ajar. I could hear Samuel's low murmur on the phone that assure you, the decision is final. Mrs. Sterling, the management company's policies are clear. Yes, 11 a.m. At 5 minutes to 11. I heard her, even through the closed door. Victoria Sterling's voice was a drill-seeking bedrock that I demand to see whoever is in charge of this. This travesty immediately. Do you have any idea who I am? Margaret's voice was calm, ICE.MR. Reynolds will see you now. Mrs. Sterling, right this way. I quickly sat down at the far end of the small conference table, head bowed over the file, the picture of a diligent underling. The door to Samuel's office opened, and she swept in. She was dressed for war in a vivid fuchsia suit, her blonde bob helmet sharp. She carried a Birkin bag and an aura of outrage so potent it seemed to warp the air. She didn't even glance at me. Samuel followed her in, closing the door. He took his seat at the head of the table. Mrs. Sterling, thank you for coming. Please, have a seat. This is Ms. Jones. She'll be taking notes for our records. He gestured vaguely in my direction. Victoria finally flicked her eyes toward me. They swept over my suit, my ponytail, my notepad, and dismissed me entirely. I was furniture. I kept my expression blank, nodding slightly. This is absurd. Mr. Reynolds. Victoria began, not bothering to sit at a notice of non-renewal. After 4 years of being a model tenant, I want an explanation, and I want it from the owner. The owner has delegated this matter to the management company, which in turn has delegated it to this firm. Samuel said, his voice a placid lake, that I am authorized to speak on their behalf. As for the explanation, it's detailed in the notice. Consistent late payments, 0.7 waivers exceeding the 2 per year policy, and multiple documented lease violations regarding unauthorized modifications and commercial activity on the premises. Late payments. She let out a short, sharp laugh. My banker is notoriously slow. Those were administrative delays, not financial ones, and the so-called violations. A tasteful water feature for the community to enjoy. An artist friend using the pool house for a weekend. That's hospitality, not commercial activity. This is harassment, pure and simple. The terms of the lease are quite clear. Mrs. Sterling, the terms are for people who need them. She snapped, finally sitting, leaning forward like a hawk. Let's stop this charade. I know how this works. You want a better deal. Fine. What's the number? A 10% increase. 15. I'll pay it. My son is at Columbia Law, top of his class. We are not people you evict. It looks bad for your portfolio. She was trying to negotiate, to buy her way out of the consequences, just as she thought she could buy her way into everything else. This is not a negotiation, Samuel said, his tone hardening a fraction. The decision is not based on rent. It's based on a pattern of disregarding the lease agreement. The owner values a stable, rule-abiding community. The non-renewal stands. You are required to vacate the premises by the end of your current lease term, which is in 38 days. Victoria's face went from flushed to bone white. The sheer, unchanging finality in Samuel's voice was something she clearly hadn't anticipated. Her leverage had met a brick wall. You have no idea who you're dealing with. She hissed, her voice dropping, losing its performative outrage and turning venomous. That I have friends on the city planning board. I play bridge with the wife of a senior partner at Cromwell Sterling. I will make one phone call, and this will be overturned. You'll be managing parking garages by next week. I had to fight to keep my hands steady as I scribbled meaningless notes. Tenant references, personal connections, makes vague threats. Samuel didn't blink. You are welcome to contact anyone you wish. Mrs. Sterling, however, I must advise you that the management company's decision is supported by documented evidence. Litigation would be costly and, in my professional opinion, unsuccessful. It would also become a matter of public record. An eviction filing, even if contested, can be detrimental to one's credit profile and future rental prospects. He just expertly parried her threat with a bigger one, the scarlet letter, the one thing her fragile social standing couldn't withstand. For the first time, I saw a crack in Victoria Sterling's armor, a flicker of real fear in her eyes. She was silent for a long moment, her manicured nails tapping a frantic rhythm on the table. She was calculating, searching for a new angle. "My son," she said suddenly, her voice shifting to a wounded, maternal tone. It was so jarring I almost looked up. That he's in his final year. The stress of a move, of this unpleasantness, could derail his entire future. He has finals. He's interviewing for positions. Surely, as a courtesy, you could extend the lease for a few months, until he's settled, for the sake of a young man's future. She was using Ethan as a pawn, a sob story. My stomach turned. Samuel's expression remained impassive, but I saw his jaw tighten slightly. The owner's decision is regarding the tenancy, not the tenant's personal circumstances. The date is firm. The last vestige of her composure crumbled. The mask of the socialite fell away, revealing the cornered, furious woman beneath. "Who is the owner?" she demanded, her voice rising. "I have a right to know who is doing this to my family. Is it some faceless corporation? A foreign investment group? Tell me." Samuel steepled his fingers. "The ownership entity is a private trust. That is all the information I am at liberty to disclose." "A trust?" She spat the word. "Of course. Hiding behind lawyers. Cowards." She stood up, her chair scraping loudly. She gathered her bag, her movements jerky with rage. She glared at Samuel. Then her gaze swept the room and landed on me. For a second, our eyes locked. I kept my face a blank slate, the anonymous note-taker. But something must have flickered. A recognition. A challenge I couldn't fully suppress. Her eyes narrowed, just for a millisecond, as if trying to place me. Then she shook her head, dismissing the thought as impossible. "This isn't over," she said to Samuel, each word a shard of ice. "You haven't heard the last of me, and you can tell your client." She infused the word with pure contempt. "That Victoria Sterling does not forget, and she does not lose." She turned on her heel and stormed out, leaving behind a cloud of expensive perfume and palpable fury. The door clicked shut. The silence in the room was profound. Samuel let out a long, slow breath. "Well," he said, leaning back in his chair. "That went about as expected." I finally looked up from my notepad. My hands were trembling now that the performance was over. "She's scared," I said, my voice sounding strange to my own ears. "She's terrified," Samuel corrected. "She has 38 days to find a comparable rental with an eviction notice looming and a spotty payment history. That's not easy, even with her connections." He looked at me, his kind eyes filled with concern. "Are you all right, Chloe?" Seeing her like that, it's different in person. I thought of the audio recording. A project. I thought of Ethan's emails. "I'll handle Chloe. I'm fine," I said, closing the folder. Better than fine. She didn't even see me. "That's what worries me," Samuel said softly. "People who don't see others are often blindsided when those people finally choose to be seen." My phone vibrated in my pocket. A text. Not from Ethan. I'd blocked his number. It was from an unknown sender. "Found more. You need to see this. Soph." I stood up, shedding the "Ms. Jones. Persona. Thank you, Samuel, for everything. What will you do now?" he asked. I looked toward the door where Victoria had made her exit, her threat still hanging in the air. "She does not lose. Now," I said, slipping my phone back into my pocket. feeling the weight of Sophia's new discovery. I think it's time to stop taking notes and start writing the ending. The text from Sophia was a siren call, pulling me out of the sterile aftermath of the meeting. The calm, professional fury I had felt watching Victoria unravel curdled into a fresh, acidic anxiety. Found more. What more could there be? Had they plotted to have me assassinated? I took the subway downtown, the rhythmic clatter matching the frantic beat of my thoughts. Sophia's apartment in the West Village was a cluttered sanctuary of books, coding manuals, and half-finished art projects. She was pacing when I arrived, her laptop open on the kitchen table, like a patient on an operating table. "You look like corporate espionage," she said, waving at my suit. How was the witch? Scared, angry, utterly dismissive of MS Jones, the note-taker. I shrugged off the blazer, feeling the ghost of Victoria's contempt slide off with it. "What did you find?" She gestured to the screen that I went deeper, into the Sterling Family Trust, the one that co-signed Victoria's lease. I leaned over her shoulder. The screen displayed complex financial documents, tax filings. It was a maze of numbers and legalese. "It's a mess. Chloe, a shell game. Ethan's dad, Lawrence Finch, set it up after the divorce. It was supposed to provide stability for Ethan's upbringing, but it's mostly debt and liabilities. The significant assets are a few underperforming stocks. And, get this, a timeshare in Boca Raton." She pointed at a line item, the primary source of income dispersed to Victoria for the last 3 years. Monthly loans from Lawrence himself. He's not just the guarantor on the house. He's bankrolling her entire performance. And those loans, they're drying up. A new email from him to her, dated yesterday. She clicked open a forwarded email. The tone was curt, exhausted. "Vic, this is the last one. I've carried this burden for 15 years. The alimony ended. The child support ended. Ethan is grown. The answer is no. Sell the jewelry. Downsize. Do something. But I am done. This is the final transfer. Larry, she's not just about to be homeless," Sophia said, her voice grim with a kind of horrified fascination. "She's about to be bankrupt. The $30,000 rent, the designer suits. It's all been a house of cards, propped up by an ex-husband who's finally cut the strings." The pieces slammed together with an almost audible click. The desperation at the meeting, the frantic name-dropping. It wasn't just pride, it was survival. She was clinging to that house, that address, that illusion, because without it, she had nothing. The realization should have made me feel pity. It only made me feel colder. She'd built her entire identity, and her son's on a lie. And she tried to use me as a brick to shore it up. "There's more," Sophia said, her expression turning hesitant. "About Ethan. It's not good. Show me." She pulled up a series of encrypted messages from a platform I didn't recognize. "He's smarter about some things. Used a secure app to talk to a buddy from law school. A guy named Derek. She scrolled, they're discussing you." My blood went still. I read the messages. "Ethan, man, it's a shitstorm here. Mom's landlord is being a total dick. Non-renewal out of nowhere. She's losing her mind. Derek, damn, that sucks. What about the girlfriend? The art history one. Still in the picture. Ethan, Chloe. She's being difficult. Freaked out after meeting Mom. Doesn't get the pressure I'm under. Derek, time for plan B." There was a long pause in the message log. Then, "Ethan, maybe. Amanda's in town for the Met thing. We're talking. Derek, smart. Ross is a golden ticket. Chloe's cute and all. But cute doesn't pay off 6-figure loans. You gotta think with your head, not your dick. Ethan, I know. I just need to handle the Chloe situation cleanly. Don't need drama. Derek, offer to stay friends. Keep her on the hook in case Ross falls through. Never burn a bridge." Man, I stepped back from the screen. A hollow, airless feeling in my chest. Handle the Chloe situation cleanly. Keep her on the hook. I was a situation. A backup plan. The casual, bro talk cruelty of it was worse than his mother's orchestrated malice. I'm so sorry. Chloe, Sophia whispered. I shook my head, the numbness spreading to don't be. It's just truth. I looked at her, the Met Gala benefit. It's next week. Yeah, Friday night. I need to be there. Sophia stared at me. What? Why? To confront him. To make a scene. Chloe, that's not to make a scene. I said, the plan solidifying in my mind. Cold and sharp as a diamond, Tio observe. To see this strategic reserve in action. And I took a deep breath that I need a dress. Not just any dress. The kind of dress that makes people ask questions. A slow, wicked smile spread across Sophia's face. Now you're talking. But that's Victoria territory. We're more. Vintage chic. Not we. I said. I pulled out my phone and scrolled past the block numbers. Past Samuel's contact. I found the one I needed. Isabel Laurent. Personal shopper. Bergdorf Goodman. A contact from a different life. A life I'd locked away. Isabel answered on the second ring. MS. Chin. What a lovely surprise. It's been too long. Hello. Isabel. I need your help. Something for the Met Gala benefit on Friday. Black tie. Statement piece. No budget. There was a beat of silence. Then pure professional delight. Mais bien, sir, that I have just received a private collection piece from a certain Italian house that is incroyable. It needs the right wearer. Where shall I send it? I'll come to the salon. Tomorrow. Discreetly. Of course. Ms. Chin. It will be our secret. I hung up. Sophia was gaping at me. No budget. Private collection. Who are you? Right now. I said, the ghost of my other life stepping out of the shadows. I'm someone who's tired of being a situation. I'm going to that gala, but not as Chloe Chin. Heartbroken art student. I looked at the financial ruin displayed on Sophia's screen, at the cruel messages that I'm going as someone they'll never see coming. The next day, in a hushed, private salon at Bergdorf's, I shed my skin. Isabel, a tiny French woman with eyes like a hawk, presented the dress. It was a column of liquid midnight silk, deceptively simple until it moved, catching the light in whispers of embedded obsidian beads. It was brutalist architecture in fabric, severe, elegant, and exorbitantly expensive. It fit as if it had been made for me. It is not a dress that speaks, Isabel said, pinning a strap. It is a dress that declares. You understand the difference. Sherry, I did. Victoria's fuchsia suit screamed for attention. This dress commanded silence. I added accessories from the family vault that Samuel had access to. Diamond studs that were my mother's. A simple platinum bracelet. Understated. Ancient wealth. The final piece was the invitation. The Met Gala benefit was one of the most exclusive events of the season. As Chloe Chin, scholarship student, I'd never get within a mile of it, but as Chloe Chin, descendant of Chunley Holdings, with a history of philanthropic donations to the museum through the trust, a call to Samuel, a discreet inquiry to the museum's development office, and an invitation was couriered to my apartment within hours. Not as Ethan Sterling's +1, as a guest of the museum's director circle, in my own name, the night of the gala. Sophia helped me into the dress. You look like a queen ready to burn down a castle, she said, her voice filled with awe. What's the plan? Seriously, I checked my reflection. The woman staring back was a stranger. Poised, imperious, her eyes holding quiet, terrifying calm. The plan is to watch, to see their world from the inside, to understand what Ethan is so willing to trade me for. And if he sees you, I smiled, a thin, sharp thing that I'm counting on it. The Metropolitan Museum was transformed. The great hall shimmered with light, expensive perfume, and the low, moneyed hum of New York's elite. I moved through the crowd like a ghost in plain sight. A few older patrons, major donors, did double takes, recognizing my father's name if not my face. I received polite, curious nods. I was a mystery, and in this world, a well-dressed mystery was an asset. It didn't take long to find them. They were a tableau of ambition near a towering floral arrangement. Ethan looked handsome and tense in his tuxedo. Victoria was in gold lame, holding court with a brittle smile, and beside Ethan, her hand resting possessively on his arm, was Amanda Ross. She was exactly as advertised, polished, pretty in a conventional way, wearing a gown that probably cost more than my tuition and screamed that old money safe. She was laughing at something Ethan said, her head tilted back in a practice gesture. He was smiling down at her. The picture of attentive charm, the picture he'd never fully painted with me. I watched from the shadow of a Roman statue. I saw Victoria lean in, whispering something to Amanda, who nodded graciously. I saw Ethan scan the room, his eyes briefly passing over me without recognition before moving on. I was invisible to him, just another well-dressed woman in a sea of them. Then, a voice beside me, Chloe-chin, "Is that you?" I turned. It was Mrs. Abernathy, a formidable grande dame who had served with my father on several boards. She peered at me through her jeweled lorgnette. "Mrs. Abernathy," I said, smiling warmly, "how lovely to see you. My dear, you are the spitting image of your father tonight." She boomed, drawing the eyes of a small circle around her. "How is dear Samuel? And how are you? I hear you're at Columbia. Art history." The conversation that followed was a masterclass in old world networking. Mrs. Abernathy introduced me to a museum trustee, a famous architect, a publishing heiress. I spoke knowledgeably about the museum's new acquisitions, about my studies, about my father's legacy. I was charming, self-effacing, and subtly, undeniably, connected. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw the moment it happened. Ethan, glancing over during a lull in his own conversation, doing a double take, so violent he almost spilled his champagne. His eyes locked on mine, widened in shock, then confusion, then dawning, horrified comprehension. He saw the dress, the diamonds, the ease with which I stood beside Mrs. Abernathy. He saw the world I was effortlessly inhabiting, that the world his mother craved, the world Amanda was born into. I met his gaze across the crowded room. I didn't smile. I didn't frown. I just held it for a beat, letting him see the unrecognizable woman I had become, letting the cognitive dissonance wash over him. Then I turned back to Mrs. Abernathy, laughing softly at something she said. When I looked again, he was staring, pale, his conversation with Amanda forgotten. Victoria followed his gaze. Her reaction was slower, more confused. She didn't recognize me at first. Then her eyes narrowed, scanning me from head to toe, taking in the dress, the company I kept. The blood drained from her face. She knew the dress wasn't from a sample sale. She knew the circles I was moving in weren't accessible to dot projects. She leaned over and hissed something in Ethan's ear. He shook his head, his face a mask of panic. Amanda, noticing the shift, looked over at me, a faint, puzzled frown on her perfectly made-up face. The orchestra began to play. The crowd shifted. I excused myself from Mrs. Abernathy and glided toward the terrace, knowing the sight line was perfect. I didn't have to wait long. I felt his presence before I heard him. "Chloe." I turned slowly. Ethan stood there, looking like a man who'd seen a ghost. What are you doing here?" He stammered. "Enjoying the party." I said, my voice cool, and even that it's a lovely benefit. "The museum does such important work. How did you get in?" The question was blunt, rude. The old Ethan, the one who saw hierarchies in everything. I took a sip of my champagne, the same way everyone else did. I imagine. An invitation. He floundered at I looked for you. After you left. I wanted to explain. Explain what? Ethan. I asked, tilting my head, how you were going to handle the Chloe situation cleanly. How you needed to think with your head, not your dick. He recoiled as if slapped. You saw those. That was private. Derek is an idiot. I didn't mean. You didn't mean for me to find out you were keeping your ex-girlfriend as a strategic reserve, while your mother graded me on my potential to elevate. I finished for him. I let the silence hang between us, filled with the distant music, and the hum of the party did its all right. Ethan. It's clarified things immensely. He took a step closer, his voice dropping to a desperate whisper. Chloe, you don't understand the pressure I'm under. My mom, the house, everything's falling apart. I was scared. I made mistakes. But seeing you here, like this, his eyes swept over my dress, a new, greedy light dawning in them. Who are you? The question was priceless. Not I'm sorry. Not I was wrong. But who are you? The value of my person had just been reappraised before my eyes. I'm the same person I've always been. Ethan. I said softly, you just never bothered to look. I saw Victoria approaching over his shoulder, Amanda trailing behind her, looking concerned and out of her depth. Ethan, darling, introduce us to your friend, Victoria said, her voice a venomous sing-song. Her eyes were daggers, trying to dissect me, to find the seam in my disguise. Ethan was mute, trapped. I extended my hand, not to Victoria, but to Amanda, Chloe Chin. I said, my smile polite and utterly empty, you must be Amanda. Ethan's told me so much about you. Amanda, flustered, shook my hand at nice to meet you. I didn't realize Ethan had such stylish friends. Victoria's smile was a rictus, Chin, an interesting name. And how do you know my son? We dated, I said pleasantly, watching the color leach from Victoria's face and Amanda's smile freeze, briefly. It turns out we wanted very different things. He was so focused on finding a partner who understood the cost of things. I let my gaze drift meaningfully to Victoria's gold lame gown, then back to her eyes. I've always believed some things are priceless. Good luck with your housing search. Victoria, I hear the rental market is quite brutal for those with complicated histories. I didn't wait for a response. I turned and walked back into the glittering crowd, leaving the three of them standing in a stunned, shattered triangle. I could feel Ethan's stunned gaze and Victoria's furious glare burning into my back. I didn't look back. The ghost had just materialized, and the haunting had begun. The morning after the gala dawned with a strange, crystalline clarity. The confrontation on the terrace played on a loop in my mind, but the sting was gone, replaced by a cold, humming certainty. I had shattered their reality. Now, I just had to watch the pieces fall. My phone, which had been blessedly silent since I'd blocked Ethan, began to light up like a casino slot machine. First, unknown numbers, then calls from Sophia, Samuel, even my mom in Florida, who'd gotten a worried text from my roommate. I silenced it. The spectacle was theirs now, not mine. I was at a small coffee shop near campus, trying to focus on a paper about Caravaggio's use of chiaroscuro, when the door's bell jangled violently. I didn't need to look up. I felt him enter, a storm of desperate energy, disrupting the quiet hum of espresso machines. Ethan stood over my table, breathing hard. He looked like he hadn't slept. His tie was askew, his hair a mess. The polished law student was gone, replaced by a frantic boy. Chloe, we need to talk. Now, I took a slow sip of my coffee, marking my place in my book that I'm studying. Ethan, and we said everything there was to say. You lied to me. The accusation was a hiss, meant to wound. I set my cup down. About what? About everything. He gestured wildly, drawing glances from other patrons. He lowered his voice, leaning in. That dress. How you got into the gala. Mrs. Abernathy. Who the hell are you? I told you. Chloe Chin, art history student. You just never listened. Don't play games with me. His composure snapped. You were there as a director's circle guest. You were talking to people my mother Dreamsoft meeting. That dress. That wasn't from some thrift store in the village. What is this? Some kind of sick test. I finally looked at him, letting him see the utter lack of emotion in my eyes at a test. No, Ethan, you and your mother were the ones administering the tests. The Met Gala, the career advice, the elevation notes. I just decided to stop being a willing participant. He collapsed into the chair opposite me, his head in his hands. You don't understand. You have no idea what it's like. The pressure she puts on me. To be perfect. To succeed. To restore the sterling name from the wreckage my father left. She sacrificed everything for me. And that justifies treating people like they're disposable. Like projects. I kept my voice low. Steady, you recorded our conversations. Ethan, you and your mother. You talked about me like I was a stock option. Mold the project or cut your losses. Keep her on the hook. I quoted his own words back to him, watching him flinch with each one. His head shot up, eyes wide with genuine terror. How? How do you know about that? It doesn't matter. What matters is that I heard it. I saw the emails. I know about Amanda, your strategic reserve. I leaned forward. The only lie I ever told you was one of omission. And you know why? Because I wanted someone to love me. Not my trust fund. Not my last name. Not my connections. Just me. The girl in the Converse and the thrift store sweaters. And you couldn't even manage that. You saw a fixer-upper. He stared at me. The pieces finally, horrifyingly, clicking together. Trust fund. He whispered. The words were a curse. Your father. Finance. Chin. Oh my God. Chunli Holdings. The Chun Family Trust. I didn't confirm or deny. I just watched the dawning horror on his face as he connected the dots. My sudden access. My poise at the gala. My utter lack of fear in the face of his mother's world. The house. He breathed. His face ashen. Oak Ridge. The non-renewal. That was you. The trust manages the property. I said carefully. Technically truthful. The decision was based on your mother's lease violations and payment history. It was a business decision. Bullshit. He spat. But it was a weak, hollow sound. He knew it wasn't bullshit. He'd seen the evidence in his mother's frantic phone calls. You did this to get back at us. To humiliate us. You humiliated yourselves. I said flatly. All I did was stop providing the audience for your performance. He was silent for a long moment, his mind racing, recalculating. I could see it, the recasting of our entire relationship in this new, garish light, every moment of supposed intimacy, now seen as a missed opportunity, a terrible misreading of the ledger. His anger began to mutate into something else, a desperate, calculating hope. Chloe, he said, his voice softening, changing timbre. It was the voice he used when he wanted something. Look, this is insane. A huge misunderstanding. On both sides. You kept this huge part of yourself from me. How was I supposed to? To know how to act. You were supposed to act like a decent human being. Ethan, it wasn't that complicated. But don't you see? He reached across the table. But I pulled my hands back. This changes everything. My mother. She was wrong. So wrong. About you. About everything. If she knew who you really were, she'd have been nicer to me. I finished. A bitter laugh escaping me. That's your argument. That her cruelty was conditional on my bank balance. And you agree with that? No. I mean, it's not that simple. She's from a different generation. She has these hang-ups about security, about legacy. But if she knew you had your own legacy, God, Chloe, we could be amazing together. Think about it. Your family's resources, my career. We could build something real. We could show her. We could fix this. I stared at him, genuinely speechless. The sheer, breathtaking audacity of it. The pivot was so swift, so seamless. I was no longer a project to be molded. I was now a legacy to be merged with. The goalposts had just moved to another planet. Fix this. I repeated slowly, you want to fix this by what? Getting back together. Now that you know, I can pay the rent on your mother's facade. Don't say it like that, he pleaded, but the gleam in his eye betrayed him. It was the gleam of a man who just found the cheat code that I love you. That never changed. I was just confused, under pressure. But now, there's no pressure. We can be ourselves. Our real selves. My real self was the girl in the Converse, Ethan, and you asked her to change. Your real self is the guy who sees people as assets and liabilities, and I'm not interested in that merger. The hope in his eyes died, replaced by a cold, panicked fury that you're going to ruin us over a little family drama, over some harsh words. My mother is losing her house. Chloe, because of you. Do you have any idea what that will do to her? To us? Yes, I said, gathering my books that I have a very clear idea. I think it's called Consequences. I stood up to leave. He grabbed my wrist. His grip was tight. Desperate. Please, don't do this. We can talk to the trust. We can explain. You can call it off. I'll end things with Amanda. For good. It's you. Chloe. It's always been you. I looked down at his hand on my wrist, then back up at his face. The face I'd once thought was kind, intelligent, full of promise. Now I saw only the petulant, frightened child beneath, terrified of losing his gilded cage. Let go of me, Ethan. He held on for a second longer, his eyes searching mine for any crack, any lingering sentiment. Finding none, his fingers loosened. I pulled my arm free. You're making a mistake, he said, his voice low and trembling. You'll regret this. The only thing I regret, I said, slinging my bag over my shoulder. I asked that I didn't see the price tag on your affection sooner. Good luck with the bar exam. I walked out of the coffee shop, leaving him sitting there, surrounded by the wreckage of his own design. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was a text from Samuel. The tenant has filed a formal complaint with the city's housing board, alleging discrimination and harassment. It's a stall tactic, but it could delay proceedings. She's also made a significant partial rent payment, with a promise of the remainder. She's trying to establish good faith. I texted back as I walked, my fingers steady. Follow the lease to the letter. Samuel, no waivers, no extensions. If the payment isn't in full by the 5th, file for eviction and notify the guarantor, Lawrence Finch, of the impending action. Understood. And Chloe, a word of caution. She's escalating. Be prepared. I knew what he meant. Victoria Sterling, backed into a corner, was no longer just a snob. She was a wounded, dangerous animal. And I had just walked away from her son, her last hope for a lifeline. The next move would be hers. And for the first time, I wasn't dreading it. I was waiting for it. The ghost was done haunting from the shadows. It was time to step into the light. Victoria Sterling's escalation, as Samuel had warned, arrived not with a bang, but with a glossy, embossed invitation. It was hand-delivered by a uniformed courier to my apartment door 3 days after the coffee shop confrontation with Ethan. Sophia stared at the thick cream envelope as I held it. I guess it poisoned. It looks like it could be poisoned. It's not poisoned, I said, though I handled it with a similar distrust. My name was written in elegant, looping script. No return address. I slid it open with a kitchen knife. The invitation was for a cocktail soiree at the Sterling Residence, Point 12, Maple Crescent at this Saturday evening. The stated purpose was celebrating community and new beginnings. The hypocrisy was so thick I could taste it. At the bottom, in the same elegant hand, was a personal note. Chloe, I believe we got off on the wrong foot. I'd like the opportunity to make amends. Please come. Victoria. I showed it to Sophia. Her eyes went wide. She's lost her mind. After everything, the gala, the eviction notice, she's inviting you to her house. It's not her house. I corrected quietly, not for much longer. And that's the point. This isn't an olive branch. It's a trap, or a last-ditch performance. You're not actually considering going. I turned the invitation over in my hands. Community. Party. She was gathering her allies, her audience. She wanted to either publicly humble me or, more likely given Ethan's revelation about my legacy, publicly reconcile with me to save face and her lease. She wanted me on her turf, surrounded by her people, to either crush me or co-opt me. I'm going, I said. Chloe, no. That's walking into the lion's den blindfolded with stake tied to your back. She thinks it's her den. I said, a plan crystallizing with cold. Sharp edges, but I hold the deed. And I won't be going alone. I called Samuel, the tenant at 12 Maple Crescent is throwing a party this Saturday. A large one, I assume. He sighed, a sound of weary inevitability that I'll check the lease. Large gatherings likely require prior approval. I'm sure they do. And given the noise complaints in her file, I'd imagine the neighbors would be sensitive. It might be prudent to have a security detail from the management company present, discreetly, to ensure community standards are upheld, and to monitor for any unauthorized commercial activity, like charging for entry. I'd seen the note on the invitation. Suggested donation, $250 per person for the Oak Ridge Preservation Society, a made-up charity. No doubt. I'll arrange it, Samuel said, understanding in you. I'll be attending as a guest, but I'd feel better if you were there as well, as my escort, and as a representative of the management company. Should any issues arise, Chloe, his voice was grave. This is a direct provocation. She will not take kindly to being challenged in front of her guests. She issued the invitation. Samuel, I'm just accepting it, and I think it's time the community met one of the owners of their trust. Don't you? There was a long pause. What are you planning to do? I'm planning to RSVP, I said, and hung up. Saturday night arrived. I wore a simple but exquisitely cut navy silk dress. Understated, authoritative, my armor. Samuel, looking every inch the patrician lawyer in a bespoke suit, picked me up in a town car. The security team is already in place, he said as we drove through the familiar gates of Oak Ridge Point 2, plainclothes agents mingling as guests. The head of the HOA board, a Mr. Harrington, is also in attendance. He's unhappy about the party. Several neighbors have already called to complain about the valet service blocking driveways. I nodded, my stomach a tight knot of anticipation. The house was ablaze with light. A red carpet was laid out to the front door, a laughable touch. The sounds of a string quartet and clinking glasses spilled into the night. We were greeted at the door by a hired attendant who took our coats. The foyer was packed. Women in cocktail dresses, men in blazers. The air thick with perfume and the low hum of privileged conversation. Victoria held court at the center of the living room, resplendent in emerald green. Laughing a little too loudly, Ethan stood near her, looking like a man awaiting execution. He saw me the moment I entered, his face draining of all color. Victoria followed his gaze. Her smile faltered for a microsecond before snapping back into place, brighter and more brittle than ever. She excused herself and glided over, a shark in silk. Chloe, you came, she trilled, air kissing near my cheek. She smelled of gardenias and desperation. And you brought a friend. Her eyes swept over Samuel, assessing his obvious quality. and a flicker of confusion crossed her face. Victoria, this is Samuel Reynolds. I said, smoothly, Samuel. Our hostess, Victoria Sterling. A pleasure, Samuel said, his voice neutral. Reynolds. Victoria's brain was whirring, trying to place him. Are you with the museum board? I'm in law, Samuel said, estate and trust management. The words landed like a physical blow. I saw the connection happen in her eyes. Reynolds, trust management, her smile tightened. How fascinating. Well, please, enjoy the party. The champagne is excellent. She was already turning away, her mind racing, trying to recalibrate. But I wasn't done, Victoria. Before you go, I said, just loud enough for the nearby cluster of guests to overhear. I wanted to thank you for the invitation. It's so generous of you to host this, especially given the impending transition. It must be a lot to manage. A few conversations around us stuttered. Ears pricked up. Victoria's back went ramrod straight. She turned slowly, her eyes glittering with venom that I'm not sure what you mean. Dear, what transition? Oh, I feigned innocence, the move. When your lease is up, I heard from a friend in real estate that the rental market is so competitive right now. I do hope you've found something suitable. A cold silence fell around us. Victoria's cheeks flushed a mottled red that I have no intention of moving. She said, her voice clipped, there's been a simple misunderstanding with the management company. It will be sorted. Of course, I said, nodding sympathetically. Misunderstandings happen. Though I've heard non-renewals can be so final, and with an eviction filing on one's record, it really does narrow the options. The word eviction hung in the air. A taboo shattered. People stared. Whispers began. Victoria's mask finally cracked. How dare you? She hissed, stepping closer, you little nobody. You come into my home and spread your vicious lies. Who do you think you are? I'm a guest, I said calmly, and as for what I am, I'm the person who knows your rent is paid by your ex-husband's dwindling goodwill. I'm the person who knows about the unauthorized subletting, the noise complaints, the late fees you always have waived. I'm the person who knows this community you're celebrating is one you've consistently disrespected. She was trembling now. Pure rage. You have no proof of any of that. At that moment, Samuel, who had been observing quietly, stepped forward. He reached into his inner breast pocket and produced a business card, handing it to her with a solemn expression. Samuel Reynolds, of Reynolds Associates, counsel for the Chun Family Trust, which holds the deed to the Oak Ridge Estates properties. All the proof is in our files, Mrs. Sterling, and has been submitted to the Housing Board in response to your complaint. The room had gone utterly silent. The string quartet had stopped playing. Every eye was on us. Victoria stared at the card as if it were a live snake. Her gaze jerked from Samuel to me. The horrible, impossible truth dawning, Chun Family Trust. She whispered. Then, louder, a screech that echoed in the hushed room. It was you. All along. Ethan pushed through the crowd. His face ashen. Mom. Stop. No, she shouted, pointing a shaking finger at me. This child has been playing us, lying to us, scheming to destroy us because she couldn't handle a little honest criticism. The only scheming I did, I said, my voice clear and carrying, that was to see if your son loved me for who I was. He didn't. He loved the idea of a project he could mold. And you loved the idea of a pawn you could control. The only thing I'm guilty of is believing, for a little while, that you were both better than that. Ethan looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him. Chloe, please. I ignored him, addressing the rapt, shocked audience of their friends and neighbors. You're celebrating community. Victoria, but a community has rules. It has respect. It has honesty. You've shown none of those things. Not to your neighbors. Not to your landlord. And certainly not to me. One of the plainclothes security agents, a large man in a suit, appeared at Samuel's elbow. Mr. Reynolds, we've had another noise complaint, and we've confirmed there is no permit for an event of this size. The HOA bylaws are clear. Samuel nodded. Thank you. He turned to Victoria, who was swaying on her feet. The picture of crumbling grandeur to Mrs. Sterling. On behalf of Oak Ridge Estates Management, I must ask you to conclude this gathering immediately. Failure to comply will be considered a further violation of your lease agreement and will be added to the ongoing proceedings. It was the final, public gut punch, the authority figure, in her own living room, telling her to shut down her own party. A woman near the front, whom I recognized as Mrs. Harrington from the HOA board, spoke up, her voice dripping with disdain that I thought this seemed excessive, and charging a donation. At a private home. Really, Victoria, this is beyond the pale. The crowd began to mutter, shifting away from Victoria as if she were contagious. The spell was broken. Her power, her social capital, evaporated in the space of 5 minutes. Victoria Sterling looked around at the faces of her friends, her neighbors, seeing not admiration but pity, curiosity, and distaste. She saw her son, standing helpless, his future crumbling with her facade. She saw Samuel, an unmovable pillar of legal authority. And finally, her eyes landed on me. In that moment, I saw it all, the hatred, the humiliation, the utter, naked ruin. She had nothing left, no threats, no leverage, no performance that could save her. Get out, she whispered, her voice ragged. Then she screamed it, spraying spittle to get out of my house. It's not your house, I said softly, so only she could hear. It never was. I turned, Samuel at my side, and walked through the parted crowd. The whispers followed us like a tidal wave. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I could feel the collapse happening behind me. As we reached the door, I heard Ethan's voice, broken and pleading, Chloe, wait. I paused on the threshold. The cool night air bomb. I looked over my shoulder. He stood amidst the wreckage of the party, his mother weeping furious, silent tears behind him. Please, he said, the word barely audible. Don't do this. I met his eyes one last time. There was no anger left in me, only a vast, empty pity. You did this, Ethan, I said, you and your mother, every step of the way. Then I walked out, leaving the sound of shattered crystal and shattered lives behind me. The party was over, and so were they. The fallout from Victoria Sterling's soiree was swift, brutal, and deliciously public. Oak Ridge Estates, it turned out, had a very efficient gossip network. By Monday morning, the story had metastasized. Victoria's financial facade was in tatters. Her eviction was common knowledge, and the mysterious, well-connected Chloe Chin was at the center of it all. The suggested donation. Scandal was the cherry on top, prompting a sternly worded letter from the HOA board about commercial solicitation. I spent the week in a strange, quiet bubble. My phone, set to only allow calls from a select few, was silent. The university library became my sanctuary. I was no longer just Chloe Chin, art student. I was a campus myth to the trust fund heiress who'd brought down a law school golden boy and his dragon mother. I ignored the stares, the whispers. My focus was on my senior thesis, on the clean, unambiguous world of 17th century Dutch masters. Their light and shadow made more sense to me than people ever had. The only interruption I allowed was Samuel. He called on Thursday, his voice carrying a tone of finality. It's done, he said. The housing board dismissed her complaint. Lacked merit. The full eviction notice has been filed with the court. The sheriff will post the notice tomorrow. She has 30 days to vacate before the physical eviction. A cold satisfaction settled in my chest and the guarantor, Lawrence Finch, notified. As per the lease, he responded, a one-line email. Proceed as necessary. I have severed all financial ties. He's done. Samuel paused, but there's one more thing. Ethan Sterling came to see me. That got my attention. What did he want? To plead. To negotiate. He offered to pay the back rent himself. To sign a new lease in his name. To guarantee his mother's behavior. He was desperate. He brought up your relationship. Tried to frame it as a personal vendetta. What did you tell him? I told him the trust's decisions were based on contractual breaches, not personal feelings, and that any further contact should be directed to our office, not to you. He left looking like a man who'd lost his compass. Samuel's voice softened that it's over. Chloe, legally, at least. But it wasn't over. Not quite. There was one final, public act to complete. The annual Oak Ridge Estates Community Gala, a state charity event held at the country club, was that Saturday. Samuel, as the trust's representative, was of course attending, and I, as the newly acknowledged, if still somewhat shadowy, beneficiary, had decided to go. This time, there was no anonymity, no pretending. This time, I would be seen. The Pine Hollow Country Club was everything Victoria Sterling aspired to be. Old, immovable, quietly dripping with wealth that didn't need to scream. I arrived with Samuel, wearing a simple, stunning crimson gown that was a far cry from the severe black of the Met. This was a different kind of armor point, one of confidence, not concealment. The murmurs started the moment we entered the ballroom. Heads turned, conversations hushed, then resumed with renewed intensity. I saw the Harringtons, the HOA board members, nod in our direction with respectful curiosity. I saw other residents, people whose names were on my trust's ledgers, look at me with new eyes. And then I saw them, Victoria and Ethan, standing near a potted palm like survivors on a life raft. Victoria was wearing last season's gown, a small but telling detail. Her smile was a ghastly imitation of its former brilliance. Ethan stood beside her, handsome in his tuxedo but hollow-eyed, a glass of champagne untouched in his hand. They were trying to brazen it out, to prove they still belonged. It was the most painful performance I'd ever witnessed. I made my rounds with Samuel, who introduced me as Miss Chin, of the Chun Family Trust. I shook hands, made polite conversation about property values and community initiatives. I was calm, gracious, and utterly in control. I was the specter at their feast, and I had finally materialized. I knew the confrontation was inevitable. It came during the silent auction, as I was examining a listing for a weekend ski trip. Chloe, Ethan's voice was ragged. I turned. He was alone, up close. The damage was clearer. The confident gleam was gone from his eyes, replaced by a sleepless desperation. Ethan, can we talk? Please, somewhere private. I looked around the crowded room. I think we've said all there is to say, publicly and privately. He flinched. You destroyed her. You know that, right? The eviction notice was posted yesterday. She's a wreck. She won't leave the house. She just sits there. Everything she built. She built it on your father's money and a leased address. I said, not unkindly, but with absolute clarity, that's not building. Ethan, that's decorating. And the lease is up. You could stop it. He whispered, stepping closer. I caught a whiff of stale scotch on his breath. With a word, you own the whole damn place. Just call it off. Tell them it was a mistake. I'll do anything. We can start over. For real this time. No lies. I looked at him, this broken prince of a crumbling kingdom, and felt nothing but a profound, weary sadness. There is no we. Ethan, there never really was. You were in love with an idea. So was I. Mine was that you were a good man. Yours was that I was a blank canvas. We were both wrong. I loved you. He insisted, but the words rang hollow. A line from a script he'd forgotten how to sell. No, I said softly, you loved the version of me you thought you could create. And when you found out I was already complete, and far more than you could ever handle, you tried to trade me in for a simpler model. That's not love. That's shopping. He stared at me, his jaw working, but no sound came out. The truth, laid so bare, had robbed him of his last defense. Your mother is moving to a 2-bedroom condo in White Plains next week, I said, delivering the final piece of news I'd asked Samuel to obtain. The rent is a quarter of what she paid here. It's a fresh start, a real one, built on what she actually has, not what she pretends to have. Maybe you should consider one for yourself. I turned to walk away. My work done. You're just like her. He spat, the venom returning, born of utter defeat, cold, calculating, using your money to hurt people. I stopped, turning back for one last look. The difference. Ethan, I said, my voice carrying in the sudden quiet that had fallen around us. That I know exactly what my money is for. And it was never to hurt you. It was to protect myself from people like you. I walked away, leaving him standing alone. The conversation had drawn an audience. I saw Victoria across the room, having watched the entire exchange. Her face was a mask of pure, impotent hatred, but she said nothing. She couldn't. For the first time, she had no power here, no leverage, no performance that would work. The evening proceeded. I was approached by several community members, not with pity or gossip, but with genuine interest. A retired judge asked about the trust's plans for a new playground. A young couple thanked me for dealing with the Sterling situation, saying the constant parties had been a nuisance. I was being accepted, not as a novelty or a victim, but as a stakeholder. As the gala was winding down, Samuel found me near the terrace doors. You handled that with remarkable grace. He said, it wasn't grace. I admitted that IT was exhaustion. I'm tired of being angry. What will you do now? He asked, his eyes gentle. The thesis is nearly done. Graduation is around the corner. I looked out at the manicured grounds, at the houses that were, in a very real sense, mine. But they were also just buildings, assets on a spreadsheet. They weren't a home. I'm going to use it, I said, the idea forming fully for the first time as I spoke, the trust, not to hide, not as a weapon, to do something. My father, he built things, real things, businesses, communities. I've been treating his legacy like a secret or a shield. It's not. It's a tool. Samuel smiled. A real, warm smile. What did you have in mind? That community arts center proposal for Upper Manhattan. The one the Trust's board has been sitting on for a year. I want to fast-track it. Full funding. And I want to be involved. Not just as a check writer. I want to help curate the first exhibition. I took a deep breath, and I'm going to donate my mother's Sarasota house to a program for first-generation college students. She's been wanting to downsize anyway. He nodded, his pride evident. Your father would be very pleased. And your mother, she'll be thrilled. She never liked that house much anyway. I looked back into the ballroom, where the remnants of the party swirled that I don't want to be a ghost in the machine anymore. Samuel, I want to be a person in the world. My world. On my terms. It's a good world to be in. He said, offering me his arm. Shall we go? I believe your work here is done. We walked out together. As we passed through the lobby, I saw a familiar figure leaning against a column, watching the valets bring cars around. It was Alex Carter, a guy from my art history seminar. Quiet, smart, with a dry wit I'd always appreciated. He was here, I knew, because his parents were members. He'd never once mentioned it. He saw me and straightened up, a hesitant smile on his face. Chin. Fancy meeting you in a den of capitalism. I smiled back. A real, Unforced smile, Carter. Slumming it. Something like that. His eyes flickered to Samuel, then back to me, clear and curious with no agenda. Rough night. I saw the showdown with Sterling. It was a necessary one, I said. He nodded, as if that was answer enough. Well, if you need a palate cleanser. A bunch of us are going to that new documentary on the Dutch Golden Age at the Film Forum tomorrow. No tuxedos required. Just overpriced popcorn and art nerdery. It was a simple offer. No subtext. No calculation. Just a shared interest. I glanced at Samuel, who gave an almost imperceptible nod of approval. I'd like that. I said to Alex, text me the time. Will do. He smiled again, warmer this time, and headed out into the night. Samuel and I waited for the town car. The air was cool and clean. Behind us, the lights of the country club sparkled, a world I was now a part of, but no longer afraid of or defined by. A fresh start, Samuel murmured. Not fresh, I corrected, sliding into the car. Just a real one. Finally, as the car pulled away from the glittering facade, I didn't look back at the club, or at the ghost of the girl who had walked into a dinner party in Converse, hoping to be loved for nothing. That girl was gone. In her place was a woman who knew the cost of everything, and the value of herself. And for the first time in a long time, the balance sheet felt just right.